Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH2503 Community Media Production. Excuse me, should have done that before I pressed record. This morning, this is the overview lecture, video summary of the topics that we'll be covering in the 14th lecture for the Community Media Production module. And what we want to talk about this week is the relationship between community media and social policy. So last week we looked at kind of some issues about collaboration and the importance of the change in collaboration and shift towards participation, and uncoupling those ideas about cause and effect that we mentioned, which is I think is a useful way to think about how we use and engage with community media, because we have to do that work, we have to do that mental work to be able to separate out what and why and how we do things differently from the way that other forms of media practice are established, kind of professionalised media practice. But what I want to talk about in this one is kind of issues about inequality, issues about health priorities, issues about how the kind of what we call the discourse of health and engagement with social well-being is represented in mainstream media, and what the opportunities for community media are to step in and talk about these issues in different ways, and how can we shape and model these issues. So we'll start off by looking at a book which is a fairly famous book that was out a few years ago, Pickett and Wilson's The Spirit Level, and that talks about the kind of the relationship between equality, inequality, and social economic development. And it says, it contests the trickle-down model of economics and the rationalist model of economics, and it talks about the idea that extended inequality is bad for social progress, social mobility, social well-being, those kind of things. And the real challenges are that the embedding of economic disadvantage is systemic, and that it's part of the structure of society, and it's designed to be that way, and it continues to be designed to be that way. And we've moved away from the social community goals of establishing well-being, removing safety nets. We're seeing this with the incredible rise of homelessness, the pressure that people are under in terms of employment and social welfare benefits to support people when they're not in employment. We've just had the news that a major construction firm has gone bust and gone into liquidation. That wasn't anything to do with the 20,000 workers. How many of them are going to be laid off and made unemployed? Are they going to be treated like scroungers? It wasn't their fault. It was the fat cats in the city, arguably, who caused the problem, not the workers on the ground. So when a business like that goes bust, what entitlement to support from the state do they have? And these are really important issues, I think, in a broader sense, because they're practical issues. We have to ask these questions. And I think one of the things we'll look at is kind of social and health inequalities, and kind of the levels of access that people have to information. So most of the time, and this particularly affects people on the lower end of the income scale, poor people, the access to information and the access to knowledge, and kind of the access to goods and services and products and vegetables are more limited when you live in a poor area than they are if you live in a wealthy area. There are also the kind of thinking about what the political objectives are in these circumstances. So it's kind of how can we address issues of inequality through social policy? And I suppose the question is, community media isn't really given much credit for the role that it plays in this, and we need to be banging the drum for this and advocating the case that community media, if it's given the funding, if it's given the backing of health organisations, educational organisations, public service organisations, then it can help and contribute towards the change, the positive change that we need to see within society to address some of these social problems. So there's a number of issues that we'll look at: gender-related inequalities, kind of how some of our social issues are hidden, class-related inequalities in terms of the life chances that people have. So it's kind of, we think we use the model of meritocracy, but meritocracy and equality of opportunity are one thing, but if you don't have the ladder to get over the hurdle, the wall that some people have, then you can be as brainy as you like, but you're still going to be stuck at the base of the wall, never going to be able to get over it because it's just too tall, and you haven't got social support to be able to help you across that. So this is kind of this is all about that idea of kind of atomization and fragmentation of society. It's a long process that's taken place. We call it, it's now kind of the word that rolls off every academic's tongue is neoliberalism. I use it a lot as well. But it's kind of also about the structural inequalities and how they relate to some of our defining factors. So we've looked at in the past about the idea of ethnic identity and social segregation, particularly in places like Leicester, high proportions and concentrations of people from different backgrounds, whereas you step outside into the Leicestershire, into the county, and that just suddenly drops away. Well, is that deliberate? Is that an accident? How did those issues arrive, and how are they addressed? How are they talked about? So we need to think about the associated problems. We can look at ideas of racism, inequalities of how we use space, being able to travel across a city. These are all important issues, the kind of socio-economic circumstances, and how it's kind of economic inequality harms society. This is the thesis of the spirit level. And I suppose in a sense we're asking questions about what the role that social media can play in helping to challenge and transform people's expectations, behaviours, those social norms that have been established through the commercial process. It doesn't seem to be making us commercial. The form of commercialisation and the form of marketisation that we are living with, I think, needs to be reformed, not ditched, but reformed, so that we can really kind of look at the factors that drive social well-being and kind of social happiness and engagement, and what's the role that community media plays throughout these things. How do we articulate the voices, and what impact does it have for policy development, so that we ensure that community media is recognised and supported as part of the solution and the answers to these social problems, rather than just being, if you like, a kind of a follow on, kind of the tortoise and the hare, and we're just plodding along at some point, hoping to overtake at one point because the hare gets lazy. How can we draw on community ideas? What are the kind of strategies for community development and improving our living standards and our lives through community empowerment and kind of through inclusion and participation? Right, the notes are up on the DMU Commons wiki, so if you go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and just search for the TECH2503 lecture notes. If you want to follow on any of the discussion in the workshops or the cafes, and then we've got the DMU Talk platform that you can share ideas and share examples with, and use it as a way of organising and discussing different things. So that's available at talk.our.dmu.ac.uk. But I'll see you at the lecture on Tuesday after the cafe.